Let's open MicroStation. Click on MicroStation's icon on your desktop. MicroStation opens in the MicroStation Manager dialog box, and here you would normally select a file to work with. But you need to make a new file, and I want you to put it on a new folder. You will likely want to work in the C drive. I'm working in an M drive, which I created specifically for MicroStation. But you would scroll down to your C drive. To open a new folder, move to the Create New Folder icon, click. The new folder pops into place. Enter a name for the new folder. I'm going to call mine Level 1. Now I need to go to the new folder itself, and now we can start a new drawing file. Click on the new file icon, and you can enter a name for your file. I'm going to call mine Start. Now before we accept this, take a look at the two options below the file name. The first one is the type of file that you're going to open. You have two choices right now. First is a MicroStation design file with a .dgn extension, or an Autodesk AutoCAD file with a .dwg extension. You obviously want the design file for MicroStation. The second option down below is called a seed file, which is a prototype drawing that MicroStation uses to set up your new design file. You really have only one choice at the moment, and if you click on Browse, you'll see that the standard default selection is Seed 2. Now, this is a design file in MicroStation which contains settings for a 2D drawing file. And in fact, you can only draw 2D elements in that file. If you were drawing 3D, you would start with the Seed 3D file. You can actually use any drawing file that you have available as a seed file. You don't have to stick to MicroStation's 2D, 3D files. But we'll use the Seed 2D file. Click on Save, and your file is now located in the Level 1 folder. Click on the file itself, and MicroStation will open in that new drawing file. Now you see MicroStation's drawing interface, and we can take a little time to look at some of the items in here. A word of caution, you're going to want to poke around and try some settings and click on Tools and Utilities, but be careful. At this stage, you need to be a little careful what you set and what you do. As you work through MicroStation to become more comfortable, then feel free to experiment. But for the moment, be a little cautious. Now let's take a look at the actual interface. Let's start on the top row and work our way downwards. Very top row is the file name, in this case start.dgn, a file we just made, and it tells us that it's a 2D V8 design file. Second row are our drop-down menus. Clicking on one of these will drop down a list of tools, of settings, of utilities, typical to CAD programs, obviously. If we move along, each one drops down and displays its contents. Now this is pretty standard Windows applications. Again, we'll be working with quite a few of these options as this course progresses. On the third row, we have a series of two basic items. From the left here, the active element template, to this icon here, which is the active element priority. All the tools along this row are called active attributes, and they relate to current attributes with which you will draw or edit elements. The second part of this toolbox starts here in Models and runs across to the final one here called the Pop Set. All of these are groups of toolboxes and settings for specific operations in MicroStation. We will be looking at some of these in this course, but not all. Dropping down into the center part of the screen, you see the actual drawing windows. This is where you draw and edit elements. At the moment, you can see two views. Number 1 is highlighted and active. Number 2 is behind number 1. We don't really need view 2 at the moment, so you can dismiss that. Move across to the X and dismiss view 2, and then maximize view number 1. Click in the maximize box, and view number 1 maximizes. Just below the name of the view, you will see a row of icons. These are the view control tools, allowing you to change the view parameters. Again, we'll be looking at these in detail later. Just below that line is this box here. This is a movable box. It's called the Tool Settings window, and in it you make settings for each particular tool that's selected. For example, right now the Element Selection tool is selected, and that's what I'm using as a pointer. But if I start, say, the Line tool, then the information changes. If I move down to one of the patterning or hatching tools, then the information changes again. Now this is a very important dialog box. You will need to make settings for each tool that you're working with. I'm going back to the Element Selection tool. On the left you can see the main drawing tools, and above them a selection of other tools which are typical for general use. Now we will be spending a fair bit of time looking at this tool arrangement. It can be very confusing because there are many ways of displaying this information, so it requires a special look at. Beneath the tools, on the next to bottom line, we see several things that are of interest to us. Ignore the view groups for the moment. Move across to the view toggles. Now we dismissed and closed view number 2 earlier on, but the view toggles open and close views as well. So view number 1 is already open. Just try clicking on, say, number 2, number 3, number 4. The 4 views pop into place on the screen, and the views themselves are movable and resizable, and you can dismiss them or enlarge them or maximize them from their own settings. You can also display all the views at the same time. Go up to Window, click, and click on Tile. All 4 views are now tiled on the screen. Notice that each view looks a little different with different arrangements of the grid system. We'll fix that in a second. For the moment, let's go back to view number 1. So return to the view toggles and turn off views 4, 3, and 2 and maximize view 1. Moving along, next to the view toggles, you'll see an X and a Y identifier. These are the AccuDraw tool settings. Typically you enter dimensions and angles here. Again, we'll discuss AccuDraw in great detail later. AccuDraw is a very important drawing tool, and you need to become extremely familiar and comfortable with that tool. On the bottom row, which is called the status line, we see certain things. On the left, we have notifications of what's happening currently and prompts for the tool that you're using. I have the Element Selection tool running, so I'm now prompted to identify an element to add to a selection set. Those prompts will change depending on which tool you're using. To the right of that, we have information about what's actually happened. If we click on that, you'll see what's called the Message Center, which provides a little more information about what's actually happened in the drawing. To the right of that, we have an icon, which is the Snap Mode icon. Click on that, and you'll pop up a list of the current snap modes, including the currently active snap mode. In this case, as you can see, it's a key point snap mode. The dot indicates that's the current snap mode. Click in the screen to dismiss that. Next to that is the Active Locks box. Click on that. This shows which drawing or editing operations are locked and cannot be changed. Click on the screen to dismiss that. Next to that is the Active Level. Again, levels are rather important, and we'll discuss that in detail later. Click on that, and you'll see the Level Manager dialog box. Currently, there's only one level in the system. That's the default, which MicroStation provides for you automatically. Dismiss that box. And to the far right are various indicators telling us the status of the drawing itself. That's all for the moment. And again, I will be talking about each item in greater detail as the course continues.